It's Valentine's Day Eve, and if there's anything more emblematic in the field of literature than the romantic poem, I can't imagine what it would be. So I'm pulling a book from the shelf, this time of poetry by one of America's least known and most underappreciated poets, Richard Brautigan. The book is entitled The Pill and the Springhill Mine Disaster. The title has absolutely nothing to do with the poems that I have in mind, but it does point up the quirkiness of Brautigan's poetry in general. And the three poems that I'm going to read to you are fairly quirky, but do really get the sense of love, the play, and the happiness of love in certain ways, at least. But I want to first explain about romantic poetry just briefly, very briefly. Romantic poetry had its beginnings in the early 15th century, at least the romantic poetry that we know in the Western world, with the balladeers that went around Europe singing pretty much the same way that musicians do today. And from those songs that these balladeers would write and sing, and some of them were added to, and they sort of evolved over time. The romantic ballad evolved, and from that came, in a more written form, the romantic poem. And so I'd like to read you three of his poems that I hope celebrate for you in varying degrees of emotion what we all feel about Valentine's Day and romantic love. The first poem is called Lovers. I changed her bedroom, raised the ceiling 4 feet, removed all of her things and the clutter of her life, painted the walls white, placed a fantastic calm in the room, a silence that almost had a scent, put her in a low brass bed and white satin covers, and I stood there in the doorway watching her sleep, curled up with her face turned away from me. Now, I don't really know too much about Brautigan's intent with this poem, but I suspect it's about a young girl, him writing about a father doting on his daughter as she goes to sleep. And this one is more teenage love, perhaps. And it's called November the 3rd. I'm sitting in a cafe drinking a Coke. A fly is sleeping on a paper napkin. I have to wake him up so I can wipe my glasses. There's a pretty girl I want to look at. Now, of course, that takes you back certainly to your teenage days when perhaps love was still new and probably very awkward, but it was there, and somehow we all managed to find a way to stumble through that dance. The third and last one is a little longer, and once again his poems are sort of quirky. This one's entitled The Horse That Had a Flat Tire. Once upon a valley, there came down from some golden blue mountains a handsome young prince who was riding a dawn-colored horse named Lordsburg. I love you. You're my breathing castle, gentle, so gentle. We'll live forever in the valley. There was a beautiful maiden whom the prince drifted into love with, like a New Mexico made from apple thunder and long glass beds. I love you. You're my breathing castle, gentle, so gentle. We'll live forever. The prince enchanted the maiden, and they rode off in the dawn-colored horse named Lordsburg toward the golden blue mountains. I love you. You're my breathing castle. Gentle, so gentle. We'll live forever. They would have lived happily ever after if the horse hadn't had a flat tire in front of a dragon's house. Now, of course, there's that whimsical nature of Brautigan's poetry, but the interesting thing here, too, is that there is the refrain that I'm sure came from the sort of impetus of the romantic balladeers of earlier centuries. So those are the three poems, and I hope everybody has a great and wonderful and loving Valentine's Day Eve. And remember, if you don't have a love in your life, love your parents, love your brother and sister, love your neighbors, love everybody. Thanks.